And I call the meeting to order and we'll move to public session.
Public? Going public?
Good.
Okay, fab. Lovely.
Okay, so welcome to this meeting of the Economy Committee. I advise those in the public gallery they are welcome to use mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode and all devices are muted. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any of the meeting. Apologies for this meeting. No apologies from Chairperson Philip Brett and from Sinead McLaughlin. Members, are you aware of any other apologies? No, and with Kate Nicholl joining us online shortly. Next, we've got declarations of interest. Members, is there any interest that anyone wants to declare? No? Okay, so as we proceed through the meeting, if anything arises, please do indicate as any declarations are required. Chairperson's business. Members, I just want to bring up under the renewable generation target. Members, one of the energy strategy targets included the increase in renewable energy generation to 80% of Northern Ireland's demands. Our committees had several briefings where we've had assurances that this may be achieved, but no explanation has been provided as to how, no plans underpinning this journey. The committee has sought clarity from the department in writing. This has not yet been received. A recent comment by departmental officials and previous informal submissions from Sony and the utility regulator appear to suggest that renewable dispatch down levels are running at 30% or higher, which is very high. With grid improvements in Mid-Antrim and Mid-Tyrone planned for before 2030, and 2 new synchronous compensators are due to be on stream perhaps by 2027. This may reduce dispatch down levels substantially, and also 5 new renewable connection offers have been made suggesting that further renewable energy generation capacity may also come on stream. So members, there's a lot in that, and I just want to open to the committee and ask for would we have agreement to write to the department, Sony and the utility regulator to seek some clarity as to whether all of these developments are the route map for achieving the 80% renewable generation target, and whether the renewable energy price guarantee scheme and the offshore renewable action plan are designed to address the anticipated growth in electricity demand in the 2030s owing to the expected increase in use of EVs and heat pumps. Members broadly content with that? Yeah, just right up. Okay, thank you. So item 4, draft minutes. Members can refer you to page 7 where you'll find a copy of the draft minutes of the Economy Committee meeting of the 16th of March 2026. Members, are you content that the draft minutes are an accurate and complete record of the committee's deliberations? Agreed? Yeah, thank you. I refer members to page 10 where you'll find a copy of the draft minutes of the Economy Committee meeting of the 18th of March 2026. Members, are you content that the draft minutes are an accurate and complete record of the committee's deliberations? Agreed? Thank you. Matters arising. Members, are there any matters arising? Anyone wish to raise? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving to item 6, the enhanced investment zone. We have both oral and written evidence. So members, the committee will now receive evidence from officials on the development of the Northern Ireland Enhanced Investment Zone. Members, the clerk has a cover note included in your pack at page 19. Members, we also have a recent departmental response which is included at page 24, a previous departmental briefing paper at page 36, and previous updates on the Enhanced Investment Zone at page 41. So at this point I want to welcome to the meeting Kieran McGarrity, Director of Economic Infrastructure Group, Department for Economy, Adrian Grimshaw, Strategic Advisor, SIB, Raymond Kelly, Deputy Director, Skills in Industry Division, Department for the Economy, and Brendan McGuigan, Director of Advanced Manufacturing from Invest NI. So thank you very much for joining us on this topic, and I just want to hand over to you and invite you to make some opening remarks.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee, for the opportunity to present an update on the Enhanced Investment Zone. As you mentioned already, I'm joined here by Brendan, Raymond and Adrian, and the reason they're here along with me as SRO for the programme is they've been heavily involved in the design and importantly will lead on the delivery of the programme. So the Committee has received a written update, so I will keep these remarks brief, really focusing on the policy, the progress, some of the key areas of the programme and critically the next steps. Since our previous appearance at the Committee last summer, the Department supported by Invest, our universities, colleges and private sectors have been working closely with UK Government to progress through the 5-stage gateway process. As you know from the paper, I'm pleased to advise this process has now been successfully completed. MHCLG ministerial approval was secured earlier this month, which followed executive approval in January. And we have now also started a pilot skills programme delivered by our colleagues in the further education colleges, so that work is already underway, and Raymond can speak to that later if required. Just I want to recap on the Enhanced Investment Zone policy. First and foremost, this is a UK Government programme. We therefore must assure them that our proposal delivers against their policy objectives. And the committee is well aware that this is around productivity in key priority sectors. And these have to be aligned to the UK industrial strategy, and critically, which support cluster development. EIZ is not additional funding to the block to use to offset pressures in the overall Northern Ireland or indeed DFE budget. As our chosen headline sector, the advanced manufacturing sector is our second largest exporting sector, with over 3,000 companies directly employing 40,000 people. It therefore presents a great opportunity to leave private sector investment and importantly support the ambition of that sector to drive forward their ambitions around growth and productivity. A link to the point about leveraging private sector investment. This programme needs to be driven by the needs of industry. UK Government is very clear that it wants to see clear evidence of industry involvement, leadership and industry co-funding. The EIZ proposition also needs to demonstrate a clear link between industry and our research base, and how that linkage will address the identified barriers to growth, which of course include skills, which the committee is aware of the huge challenges that companies are facing in our target sector, advanced manufacturing. It's estimated that about 1,500 new workers are required each year in that sector. And that brings us on to the focus of cluster development, because as best practice across Europe and further afield, that involves the creation of triple helix. Business, academia and government working in partnership to support sectoral growth rather than just focus on individual company growth. Drawing upon advice from the Productivity Institute, we recognise the shift the balance of our investment from focus on individual grant support to companies to investment in the innovation ecosystem that can support that wider sectoral growth. So that support will look to reduce the high technical and capital barriers that inhibit company investment in R&D. So that means our universities and colleges will be absolutely fundamental to driving growth in this key area and supporting companies to do that. Now, following UK Government approval, our focus now turns to delivery of the programme, and in particular progressing some of the key private sector projects that underpin that programme. These projects underpin our focus in biotech and photonics and will be critical to growth of clusters in these areas, which are a key priority for UK Government as well as the Executive. These are the projects that will become the anchors of which wider activities funded by the EIZ programme or indeed other sources will move forward. Both the photonics and the biotech projects have been shaped by extensive and indeed ongoing engagement with companies, clusters, Hirani, Makers Alliance, or universities, SMEs and other groups, so significant involvement there. We are fortunate here in Northern Ireland to have a strong track record of industry and university engagement, and I'm pleased to say both our universities, our colleges, sectoral industry representatives, the Skills Council are all represented on the EIZ advisory panel, which the department has established to support us as officials in the development of that programme. That engagement has involved workshops, steering groups, technical consultations and international missions, ensuring the interventions reflect real industry need and deliver benefits across Northern Ireland. I just want to highlight the committee a few specific points of the programme which I think are worth noting as we enter into the delivery stage and perhaps into discussion later. First and foremost, this is a 10-year programme funded entirely by UK Government. A funding profile has been set across those 10 years, and this profile informs the scope and speed of our spending across that programme. So that is a flat cash originally from other EISs. We have successfully noted different amounts, but it is UK Government funding across that 10 years. Secondly, our focus during the programme and fundamental securing UK Government approval was delivering those clear co-investment support from industry. The committee will see from the briefing paper the anticipated leveraged investment from private sector partners across the programme. And this extends to what we call our anchor projects, which also lever significant levels of co-investment. And our focus now, and will continue to be working with those private sector partners to convert their ideas and investment proposals into delivery. Thirdly, the programme, as broadly approved, sets out how the 150 million will be used across the thematic areas. So as you see in your papers there, the thematic areas are designed to address the barriers to growth that we identified in our Gateway 2 submission to UK Government. And we articulated those to the committee last year. These interventions span thematic areas of skills, access to R&D, business support and infrastructure. If you think it's like a menu of interventions, and we will flow through. You will appreciate, I hope, that I am limited in what we can share with the committee in relation to the key anchor projects that we have, as there are commercial discussions ongoing with those partners. I understand, however, that the committee in the recent visit to the North West spent some time. One of those companies are involved, and hopefully they have updated you on progress. In conclusion, the investment zone presents a tremendous opportunity to support our targeted subsectors in photonics and biotech. It will allow our wider manufacturing base to grow and improve our productivity and performance, which will in turn support wider growth across the economy. Now that we have approval, our focus is now working with our colleagues in the private sector to convert our first year plans into delivery. We've already set challenging timescales to make early impacts, and there's a willingness from all partners to work forward together to support delivery of this important programme. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to hear the approvals come through. £150 million of funding coming through from the UK government for this, for these priorities. It's critical to make sure that we see that maximised. You talked a bit about the cluster programme, the cluster acceleration programme, and I know there's been some discussion around the innovation corridor between Belfast and the North West, potentially supporting life and health sciences and potential for others. I just wanted to ask, does the department have a formal policy on the development of clusters, how they're identified and where they're placed?
In terms of the cluster development, obviously Best and I lead on that, but we have identified target areas where we're moving forward. You quite rightly mentioned the Local Innovation Partnership Fund. I'm on the panel for that there too, which has looked at the Belfast to Derry corridor, and around looking at our life and health sciences. Our sectors have been identified to align closely with UK government's 8 priority sectors. So that's the areas clustering as a principle across Europe and all the That is what will drive growth. That will drag in your micros and your SME businesses working with those large anchor projects. In terms of policy, it's where industry is focused. How do we support? But if you look at where we have identified in photonics and biotech, and you were up in the Northwest recently, that is an opportunity to drive clusteral growth around a key anchor company there. But it will bleed out across all of Northern Ireland. And if you look at and Brendan might want to come in this, and the photonics cluster that we have now as identified movement, that encompasses the supply chain, encompasses colleges right across Northern Ireland. So I wouldn't want to be, again, if you look at clustering policy, I was involved in this previously, I'd look at geographic clusters, more as sectoral clusters where you draw in modern technology, can access people in the west of Northern Ireland right through to the east, drawing a college, Southwest College, working with a company in Derry or Coleraine. So the physical, I wouldn't be overly focused on the physical limitation. What we want to do is see where does Northern Ireland have existing capability where we can scale. And that was the driving force identified around biotech and photonics. So we have capability here. But if we want to grow that sector and we want to grow at a pace, we need to invest in the infrastructure, and that's what that enhanced investment zone. But maybe if Brendan might want to come in the cluster if he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cluster piece is really key here because it allows us to go beyond what the EIZ funding does. It's how do we interact with a consortium of companies, the 2 universities? How do we bring VCs into that? How do we internationalise these clusters? You want them to go and build connections with international clusters to create opportunities to attract investment in. So that cluster really becomes nearly the front door into the Northern Ireland photonics and biotech sector. They become the face, they become the public voice, and it really allows us to go hard at supporting those businesses. It's also important photonics is an enabling technology, and it cuts right across lots of different sectors. So it doesn't just benefit one, it cuts across health and life sciences, telecommunications, automotive, aerospace. So it's a really good example of a cluster where you can draw in different companies from different sectors who do different things, but to come together on a cluster to solve common problems. And that can be based around skills, innovation, R&D, and international trade. And by working collectively, they can solve. And we know that companies who work in clusters are more productive than those that don't, and there's lots of evidence to back that up.
Were you saying under this programme that all of the cluster setups has already been decided? Yeah, it's all in there. And have we got that detail?
To secure UK government approval, we had to identify niche. So we just couldn't go with life and health
They're all
sciences.
there.
We couldn't just
Okay.
go with advanced manufacturing. We had to niche down into areas. It's not an awful lot, in proportionate terms across 10 years. So UK government wanted to see a focus. We have focused on photonics, which was an emerging, nascent technology we're looking forward. We knew that one of the anchor projects wanted to go into a new area which needed to involve other companies and our universities and colleges across Northern Ireland to development. Similarly on biotech, we knew there was a gap in the infrastructure. But Invest NI has already been leading on a cluster programme for many years. This is turbocharging it.
Okay.
This is filling a gap where we're moving forward. So we had to present that, all right, this is like a business case to UK government. It wasn't like give us the money and then we work out what we do it. And I think from previous thing, we've clearly identified it's advanced manufacturing with a focus. And if you look at the spend profile where they are, major investment is going into key areas around that clustering activity.
Yeah, no, that's good clarity, and like Northern Ireland's not a huge place, so hopefully as you say, the outworking reaches everyone. Yeah. Hopefully some of those clusters outreach right down to the southeast of Northern Ireland, where I represent as well. I just wanted to ask you, the Permanent Secretary previously told committee about the potential of a Ryanair logistics hub. I just wonder, could you give us a bit more detail of that, or where that may sit within this?
I can give you a little bit of update, but again, just I think the Permanent Secretary said before, we are in a competitive environment. We are competing for that location against a number of other sites across Europe. Mm-hmm. We are in advanced discussions with them, led by Invest NI, working with UK government, working with other partners across government. I'm involved in it as well, to try and develop a business case that would secure approval. We also went, I shared with the committee an update, we went to the executive as part of how some funding from this programme could be used if that project materialised. But we are, Chair, limited, very limited, and certainly I can't release the amounts we're given because obviously there's other regions are involved as well. We are working to a Ryanair timescale, but there is a workshop planned next week with Ryanair and colleagues from Invest NI at UK government, and Aidan here will be there at that there to make sure we get the detail we require that would justify an investment into that project. But they have progressed. They've been up here on a number of occasions, looking at various opportunities, particularly on the skills opportunity with the colleges. That's massive for them.
Oh, thank you, and appreciate it. And just a final one from me. Obviously, we've got this £150 million external linked to this programme, but obviously it's aligning a lot with priorities. As you say, you've got the department, you've got Invest NI, SIB and things coming forward. And I just wanted to ask how this interacts with the local economic partnerships and innovation partnerships. Like £45 million was announced by the previous minister, and how that was coming into local areas. I just wonder how do those things interact with each other?
There is, I'll give an example, one of the areas we're looking at, Mid-Ulster, and we are looking at trying to drive forward a project around advanced manufacturing funded by the EIZ programme, which is working closely with where the local enterprise partnership there are looking at pump priming that. Now that still has to go to their governance procedures and procedures, but we would be a follow-on funder from that project if it happened around the skills development. So there is alignment. Again, there's alignment also with the Local Innovation Partnership Fund. There's absolute alignment across. I look after city and growth deals with some of the AMIC facility, also Cadrick in the northwest McGee you're up to with Seagate, etc. So there's an alignment between all the various programmes moving forward, and that will also inform our priorities around investment, PhDs or wherever else. So there's full alignment with our various policy initiatives.
Yeah. No, thank you, and I appreciate that. Like, collaboration is important, and you talked about it with the business, academic and government all working together on it, and working with the other funding streams is really important. And I'm just going to bring some other members in now. Thank you, Padraig.
Thanks, Chair. And I suppose my points really focus around interaction, like the Chair's points as well, with what funding's there and what's already in place. So my first one really is around, and you've partially answered this, around the existing clusters. So can you just talk to us in a bit more detail around how you're working with the existing clusters, particularly around productivity targets?
So Invest NI has a cluster acceleration programme where we are seed funding quite a number of clusters with the view that we will then support 5 super clusters. Now they're outside of this funding, that's the Invest NI programme. So the likely one of those will be in advanced manufacturing. So we're working very closely with Invest NI across our programmes to see how can we, that's a really strong vehicle for industry to come together, articulate clearly what their needs are as a group and how they're going to work together to solve productivity, but then how does Invest NI and document that, and how can they access other funding streams to do it. So as Karen said, EIZ is ring-fenced around biotech and photonics, and this gives us an opportunity to funnel significant funding into those and accelerate those. but we're still committed to working with the other clusters, but that will have to be as business as usual through what Funds Investing has available.
Okay, no, that's useful. And it's good to understand that interaction between the companies and the clusters as well. In terms of the photonics, obviously you've mentioned we were with Seagate last week or the week before, obviously a dairy-based company, so declaring interest here as a dairy-based MLA. But the work that Seagate are doing is fantastic in this area and exploring and expanding. But also in the past week or so, they've also announced 80 new highly paid jobs. So this is about good employment, sustainable employment, growth in employment, and so on. And one of the things which I'm really keen to understand out of the economic investment zones is exactly how you can make sure that there are long-term targets and long-term goals. You've mentioned working with colleges, the triple helix model, which is also important. So beyond the scope of this particular project, what do you see the impact looking like in the years following that?
EIZ is very much, for us, an enabler. So if you've taken photonics, nascent technology, there is a cluster already there called Photon X moving forward. There are ideas in that cluster about how they move forward. This will pump payment to move forward. You mentioned Seagate. Seagate have ambitions to move into new areas. We would see this creating the evidence piece to allow investment decisions to be made with them moving forward. It also informs, and I'm talking about alignment again with the SPEAR project in Tyndall and ATU and Letterkenny, about how we create a skills pipeline. And the spin-offs come through that from the university. So it's creating and this is a key focus of EIZ and a key focus in fairness from UK government to sort of like, don't spread the jam too thin. Let's focus in the areas where we've got real capability and you want to grow. The challenge for us is to make sure, back on the alignment point here, is to make sure that our other programmes align in and come in behind it on the skills agenda. And that's why skills are so important. So I think this is foundational work. And certainly if you look on the biotech side and clusters, we're part of that project moving forward is putting in wet lab infrastructure. That's physical infrastructure. Have a longevity about it. That's investment made by the private sector. They're not going to invest in here for us on the short term. So we are minority funders in that project moving forward. And it's where the private sector taking a risk gives you assurance that they're here for the longer game. They're not in and out getting a 90% fund and in 3 years they're gone. That's not the way the funding has been designed. We would not have got you appreciate that. The executive wouldn't have signed off on this, and neither would my minister have signed off on that sort of programme coming forward. This is about creating the foundations for future growth in key areas, recognising that this 150 million over 10 years is a small proportion of what is required, but it is an enabler.
In that term, enabler, I think is really important because one of the things which we've mentioned time and time again actually at this committee is about the R&D growth and that sometimes that's curtailed to about 10 companies. And I suppose one of the ambitions of the department and certainly of the minister, but of this committee, I think broadly speaking as well, is that reaches more businesses and that more people feel the benefit of that. So following on again on the impact piece of this, how do you see that reaching other existing businesses, but also entrepreneurs to actually go out and use that expertise, that growth?
This goes back into thematic, maybe Eddie might want, this comes back into our thematic structure of the fund. So you have investment in our key anchor projects, key investment there, and then you wrap around support that draws companies who would not otherwise have been drawn in to that opportunity to work. So if you look at the photonics cluster, there are micro businesses and smaller businesses as well as those large multinationals. So we have designed that programme to ensure and to complement existing interventions and invest, or indeed on a skills agenda. It's about building capability and capacity. Maybe you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the programme is over 9-10 years. We have a finite amount of cash. We've agreed what those yearly spend is, and it's about shaping the programme so that we deliver the assets. Those assets can then be populated. The clustering can then come in around that and support. It can build capability in the cluster. They can work together, they can collaborate, they can innovate, and then they can actually utilise the facility and utilise the R&D funding that's available under the programme for those target subsectors to then create growth potential beyond that. So it's a virtuous circle. It's self-reinforcing, and that's the sequencing of spend. That's how we want to deliver the programme. We have, at a headline level, we've looked at the economic impact of this. We've had some analysis done. The economic impact is 1.1 billion. The creation of 2,000 jobs, which is 1,000 direct and then 1,000 temporary. But that's very much a baseline. Based on what we know at this stage, there's been wider analysis done on what the future productivity will look like. And as we go through and firm up the expenditure approvals, then obviously we'll have specific outputs and benefits falling out of those approvals, which we then track onwards through the delivery of the programme. At MHCLG as a funder of this, there's an entire reporting system set up, and they are absolutely seeking the outputs and the metrics from this programme. And we will have to deliver that, and we'll have to report back to this committee to show how we're delivering that.
Happy days. And I suppose I was going to ask for those figures to be shared with the committee, but you're obviously proactively doing that. Look, thanks. You've answered all my questions. And Chair, can I just say, I think it's been really useful to have a concise presentation and concise answers. It's been really refreshing. So, thanks.
Thanks, Padraig. And Adrian, just on that one, just checking, do we have a copy of that economic impact assessment, or can we get a copy?
We can share it with you. There's no difficult. It's a model that's been developed. We've shared.
I think it would be really good. You're saying £1.1 billion.
Yep.
It would be great if you could share it. Thank you very much. Diana?
Yeah, thank you and good morning. Thanks for coming in to the committee this morning. Yes, I'm interested in how this has evolved from 2004, the initial proposal, and 2 years on. Firstly, I wanted to ask the resource you're using from the department. Are you adequately resourced in terms of manpower and staffing to take this proposal and to run with it as it launches?
In short, yes. We're fortunate this programme provides some resource funding. You'll see from the programme there's £6 million there. So we are using that funding some of the colleagues in my team and some of that will work to Brent as well. I'm also fortunate in the department that I look after city and growth deals and some of the technical expertise. Adrian came from city and growth deals, and some of the financial economists and statistical expertise comes across with that too. So we're able to deploy and build on the expertise of our programme delivery. So we have done a plan moving forward that will support delivery through Raymond's side on skills and Brendan's side on the wider innovation, the ecosystem. And my role moving forward to the SRPro and the team that I have will be about monitoring benefits realisation and importantly change control. Because this is, we made it clear at the committee that we need flex in this programme, that there will be new opportunities. The world will have moved on in 2020-30. You know, there will be new opportunities emerging, and so how do we flex the programme, new ministerial priorities, new government priorities, so but the resources there to do that.
Thank you. And I see it's evolved, from initially talking about agri-tech into AME and into photonics. Where is agri-tech? Where do you see agri-tech fitting?
There's initially focusing around the green technologies, but again, I think we explained to the committee last year, the size of the economy and the size of the co-investment just wasn't there to get that through. Green will still be involved, so advanced manufacturing, and photonics will lead to support around that there. In terms of advancement and agri-tech specifically, again, that falls within advanced manufacturing. If you look at some of the programmes we have here, we are focused on biotech, and we are focused on photonics as the core, but there will be other general skills support across the advanced manufacturing sector. There are 3,000 companies that productivity in the advanced manufacturing sector is improving. We need to turbocharge that, and so there's leadership, there's lean technology. Maybe Brent might want to speak to this, or Raym can speak to the skills opportunities, but we have identified funding within the programme that would go to that broader base of companies.
Very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. David?
I really welcome this. I really welcome the focus. I think it's really good. You talk about turbocharging stuff, and I think the focus is really brilliant. What I'm struggling to understand is why this hasn't happened before now. Why did it take a programme like this to actually move the department and everything to do this work?
Well, this is the programme that the UK government has provided us.
But if it's so incredible and that you sell it really well and it's been really distinct, I don't understand why it's taken a programme to push us to do this.
Well, if I'm being honest, it was budgetary pressures, same as city deals. We would not have invested not have invested anywhere near the funding. I couldn't be sitting here, really, or I'm sure the Minister would find it challenging to find the amount of money that is needed for some of our key anchor projects now.
Okay.
And I see them in the city and growth deals, and if we look at the investment we have made in advanced manufacturing at £88 million into the AMIC project, that just wouldn't happen.
This is 15 million a year over.
But it's 15 million a year. But when we look, and we then have to, again, that flexibility of funding. If a new opportunity comes in and wants compressed over 2 years, 3 years, I will have to then negotiate with the UK government to draw down that and reprofile. We have already reprofiled it because we see peaking demands in years 2 and 3. So it'll be more than 50, and then we'll tail off.
So you're not having 150 million over 10 years in equal time. So
that's what UK government wanted. We successfully negotiated a repro because you can't deliver. The private sector, they need the money when they need the money. I can't say I can give them a year 5. It just won't happen.
Yeah, no, that's the next bit was about the flexibility of that, because it seemed really rigid of, this is going to move forward. So you can have the flexibility in
with their agreement.
Okay. The next
it's their money, their programme, but it's a change control process in any programme. I would hope that given the private sector need, that Treasury and UK government would say, yes, a good thing to do. Why would we want to hold this up?
What's different in that? What's different in that support that a company would get than what's already available?
Well, if you look at the companies just wouldn't get it.
For the Invest couldn't fund that.
Not the scale, not in terms of the budget. If we look at their anchor projects, we're putting in the scale of that investment in terms of what they earn. It's just the magnitude.
So I'm being positive of this, right? But I'm really worried that a company would want to scale, wouldn't be able to scale without this.
And that's the challenge we face. I'm sure, like across the economy, we are incentivising with this support that company to make those private sector investments. Yeah. Like we have investment in the wet lab. That's a private sector company and would not make that. Now, that's not to say that if EIZ wasn't there and the proposal came in, the department investing and the minister would reprioritise funding, but that would be taken out of a budget, and that money would then be, in inverted commas, not be an opportunity lost to others.
No, I get this. But the bit that's really good with this, and something I've banged on about for so long, is that linkage between everything. You're linking all of it and you're bringing it together, which is the bit that's been missing, right? As you look at it, thinking from a company and a business rather than thinking it from a department. You've 1,500 people. You talk about you're going to need 1,500 people or skilled workers. Where do they come from?
It's a challenge. We will have reskilling, new opportunities. That's the focus on a wider skill strategy. That EIZ is not the EIZ will support delivery of that. Just so again, I'm trying to manage expectations here. This is in overall terms of investment in the economy through what we're moving forward. This is relatively small and it is focused. Yeah. This is trying to in these niche areas. So if I already have a pressure coming through to me on biotech for clinical academics, they are costly. They are expensive. The programme does not have the budget yet for clinical. So that's another decision we have to have. But it will require funding from other sources. Now, EIZ could be the enabler. So there could be 3 different funding pots. This could be pot number 4 that makes it happen. Without EIZ, it wouldn't happen. And that's all I'm trying to make the point. It's scale of budget.
So what I'm trying to get to is you want 1,500, or you need 1,500 people, which is brilliant, which is absolutely brilliant. We want better jobs and we want to create better opportunities. It's the journey that 1,500 people have to get to the point. So you've got the companies developing product and the job opportunities, but you also need the staff. Yeah. What work is happening to make sure that those skilled that's happening?
That's the broader sort of skills piece that we're looking at. So there is the broader piece around advanced manufacturing itself as a sector, but also then looking at those 2 subsectors. So we're looking at is for newer areas, how to develop qualifications there that nobody else has at the minute, so we can actually be leading in that. Additionally, then we're looking at schemes that can either repurpose people who are in industries that are maybe at risk of automation. How do you upskill or reskill them so they're actually available to work in these new and emerging areas? We also have people who are economically inactive. How do we maybe support them specifically for these subsectors here, because we have a pot of money that we can actually dedicate towards that. We also have the pipeline of people coming out of education. How do we support them to actually choose this as a career choice? So there is a multitude of pathways that we're looking to put into this.
The one that I'm really interested there is the inactive. Mm-hmm. So if we've got people inactive and that money, that is absolutely brilliant to hear. Absolutely brilliant. So can you give us a little bit more of how much money is available for targeted at that? Because again, you're talking about targeting business and things. We also need to target areas of employment for people here and create opportunities for people. So
For that area, it's £18 million for the retraining and economic and inclusion area, so it covers all of them. What we would be looking for is we'll be going out from April, hopefully, to seek bids from different training providers to see what sort of training we could get. We would then assess them and then move them forward. So it's 18 million over 10 years. That's
Upskilling, reskilling,
Upskilling, that's it.
capability development.
It's critical. It's absolutely critical to the wider context.
And just again, managing the expectation. So this is our program moving forward. The spend profile. It's not a big bang. But it's informed by those clusters about, well, how do we get, and there's examples again, you talk about alignment, the SPEAR project, which is working with ATU and Tyndall about how do we get the college involved, how do we get others involved in that there that will bring more people into the sector where Seagate and other companies need and that sort of thing.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, David. And just on that one, where you're talking about the universities, academia, businesses all working together in terms of that, are you looking at packages whereby you'll have businesses and the universities thinking about funded packages for academic training and then guaranteed jobs and like a package around that? Because I know myself in particular down in the Mournes near where I live, where employers have bought into that, they're working with the universities, they're helping rural people get through university. You're getting that skills base and then you're getting the jobs back into those cluster areas. I'm sure it's the same sort of thing up in the northwest. It's just you have an opportunity here when you're talking about these three sectors together. Is that sort of a programme thought?
So it's one of my, essentially there we would need the employer and the education provider there to be bringing that to us and saying this is what we'd like to do. But yes, it's something that could be taken forward. Additionally, then you can look at things like the academy style models where you actually put people through that training but with a guaranteed job interview at the end if they successfully complete. So there are different approaches. We already have apprenticeships, higher level apprenticeships. We don't want to be duplicating what's there, but are there ways we can potentially incentivise employers to actually maybe help them with the apprenticeship system if needed as well?
Yeah, because as a young person coming through, you getting trained up to be able to see that pathway, that there are companies here that, alongside government interventions that are guaranteed a career path in Northern Ireland is really, really important. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your presentation this morning. It's fair to say that the Enhanced Investment Zone is a strategic opportunity. It's focused, it's targeted, it's probably what we all wanted to see for quite some time. Quite often we get bogged down in the committee talking about regional balance rather than looking where the skill sets are in particular parts of our country and ultimately enabling them to have further investment, further jobs, etc. And I recognise that £150 million over 10 years, it's money we didn't have, but in the grand scheme, when you look at some of the projects that you'd want to deliver, as David has said, if you took it across the 10 years and 15 million a year, it's not a great deal of money with the challenges that those industries face. It's good that there's flexibility built into that because that'll certainly maybe act as a catalyst for something else. So just on the first question, and you mentioned this, Kieran, briefly, how has this project interacted with the City and Growth Deals project, and is many of the same projects came through there the same that are being used, or it's a part of a sticky ball almost in terms of they're getting a piece of funding here from City and Growth but they're getting a piece from Advanced Investment Zone funding? And maybe talk a wee bit more about that if you could.
And this is the beauty, this was the benefit of me being involved the last 6 years and to bring it forward with the universities and the colleges and all the City and Growth Deal projects. So if we look at photonics, so the advanced manufacturing sector and indeed the category focused, again, it's a key area. Seagate, we're partners with Queen's already and moving forward. So the new facility that will be opening in Newton Abbey in September will have an enhanced offering as a result of EIZ funding moving forward. That's that businesses need and business demands. There's full alignment there. If we look at the wet lab facility, we look at iReach and we look at CDHT. So iReach and drug trials, CDHT on the digital health technology led by Ulster University there. That will supply a pipeline of ideas and more importantly nascent companies to come forward and use the infrastructure, because that's what's missing. That's the gap on biotech. It's infrastructure. So our investment, that's the gap that's been missing. So we will put in place wet lab infrastructure that Northern Ireland does not have at present. Other places do, South, England, other places. This is what we are missing, and that will then create that. And that's the stickiness or the capability that we want to try and move forward, that we create that pipeline. That's in the end of the ecosystem.
Okay. So you mentioned call for evidence where a number of projects were identified. You might not be able to, you can't go into detail of what the individual projects were, but what sort of number of projects were identified at call for evidence?
There was 24, and the call for evidence was exactly a call for evidence. It was not a funding call. It was it was to inform UK government. Do you know what? There's ambition here. The private sector, there's ambition here, and their where's your focus then, Keir? And our focus is on those projects coming from the biotech.
And it's fair to say of those 24, would have been quite a significant regional diaspora, whether that's in Mid-Ulster, whether that's in Fermanagh. Given that so many of our councils had been engaged in the city and growth stage, that they'd already done a lot of the groundwork on potential projects, so that's fair to say. Obviously, one of the main the main principles of this was to tackle the barriers to growth and productivity. It was outlined, but could you perhaps say it again? What were those main barriers that were identified here in Northern Ireland? And was there specific issues identified that were barriers to growth in Northern Ireland that didn't pertain to the rest of the United Kingdom? And I'm largely thinking of the advanced manufacturing side, who have been, facing significant challenges in terms of the regulatory framework associated with the Windsor framework and the barriers that had in terms of their capabilities and capacity. Were those issues identified, and was that part of the case put to UKG in relation to trying to trap down as much funding as possible?
We can go through these now. I think we explained last year at the committee in our Gateway 1 and 2, we identified the ambition, we identified the barriers, and maybe we can talk to what the summary of what those barriers were.
Yeah, as a headline, so Gateway 1 and 2 required us to talk about the constraints and the barriers that exist. So from just a few notes here, skills, obviously, which we've talked about, the labour shortage, so the ability to reskill and get those 1,500 new workers that are needed. Energy costs was a broad barrier and constraint to growth locally, as we all know. Sector image, so promoting advanced manufacturing as a career choice for all, and that relates back to the skills again. And then when you look at the specific subsectors, it's sort of infrastructure gaps, so wet labs was a particular gap, doesn't exist. We should have 5, I believe, in comparison to other marketplaces. We don't have any, so that's a key gap that we're looking to fill. Same on the photonics side, so the R&D, the innovation capability that will be delivered through AMIC in conjunction with the photonics sector, and then just a wider uptake of innovation and technology adoption. So this is a broader play across advanced manufacturing, automation, connectivity, 5G, all the technological advancements that can be put into a production environment to increase productivity. There would be more, but they were the headlines.
Okay, so when I talk to business at the moment, particularly those that are keen to expand, the biggest restriction has been infrastructure. What has been the coordination? I think one of your points particularly mentioned, which is to overcome infrastructure constraints, will support strategic industrial sites and shared specialist facilities. So what has that conversation been like with Invest NI, particularly? I look at my own constituency, particularly in central Craigavon, there's huge Invest NI held land, but there is restrictions in terms of infrastructure capacity. How quickly can those, so obviously I would imagine when we look at the profiling of funding, those issues would need to be early to enable investment thereafter. So how has that reprofiling, that conversation been going on with Invest NI?
So again, from the table you'll see, so on the infrastructure we had identified sort of capital interventions and site utilities, and we'd also looked at an innovation site along the Dublin-Belfast economic corridor. Again, drawing upon the land and property strategy that Invest and I had identified 140 million investment, and this is just a choice here about prioritisation. So those discussions have been ongoing. This is where it aligns again with city and growth deals. So we are looking at the Mid-South-West deal, we're looking at a couple of sites, as you know, that for investment into advanced manufacturing and certainly on the green focus on the innovative side. So those discussions are ongoing. Again, John, it's pressure and funding, and it is just, if we could easily have taken the 100 and said land was the barrier, or infrastructure is the barrier, go to the UK government says out of the 150 million, we want to spend 140 million developing these 10 sites. But the issue was that UK government are very clear. They need to see those levels of co-investment now, and commitment from. So not build it and they will come.
So how does that align with other departments and what has worked across departments? I'm particularly thinking of infrastructure, for example, where there is to enable this funding to happen, and we all know that the 150 million will not solve all of its problems, but if it was connected with other strategic projects across, for example, the Department for Infrastructure, where there is severe restrictions in terms of wastewater capacity, other infrastructure, how does that conversation happen?
And we have a programme board, and we will look at the opportunities again coming back from industry. Where are those needs moving forward, and how do we take forward the solutions within the budget constraints that we have to move forward? It's an ongoing process, John, and we will lead on the site infrastructure and invest about homes. We will invest the lead on that there.
Is the Department for Infrastructure represented at all in any of these boards?
Department of Infrastructure aren't on this board.
Okay. But there is an ability for strategic...
It's just to engage.
Okay.
I engage with them on city and growth deals. They sit on this Northern Ireland City and Growth Panel.
There's mention of an innovation corridor between Belfast and North West, and I suppose what does that mean? Innovation corridor? It depends what road you take, essentially. So I'm trying to maybe lean in on a bit of thinking about what essentially does that language mean in
that's
practice?
linked again to this new funding stream, the Local Innovation Partnership Fund, where UK government identified that Belfast North West corridor, and it's the BRCD region and the Derry City and Strabane. They drew that. That's the line that's been drawn.
So going on
to
a point that David had raised, obviously you talk about the number of jobs potential that are needed to fill the ambition of the strategy. So obviously that's a challenge. Northern Ireland has the lowest unemployment rates right across the UK. I think it's in the region of 2.6% is forecast for 2026. So it would say that the number of jobs that are needed, if you look at the marketplace, the candidates aren't there at present. And I think that also fits to a wider argument and a challenge that Invest NI has, because one of the key aspects is about growth and productivity, and quite often that can mean automisation. How does that conversation fit in with some of the key performance points for Invest NI going forward? Because obviously many of these businesses are going to have to automate to fill the gap of productivity, but then again that argument does not sit well when it comes to job creation versus investment.
I think the focus, John, is really on productivity and automation, and we have a professional advisory panel that supports me and the programme board in terms of making decisions about moving forward. So, for example, Makers Alliance will be on it, Parental will be on it, and that's that intelligence that comes from industry focus. And there is a challenge, but productivity is improving in the advanced manufacturing. Jobs there's an increase. We're growing 90,000 plus jobs in our sector moving forward. In contrast to the wider UK. So there is opportunities, but maybe Brendan might want to come in the wider productivity, these jobs.
Yeah, so within the programme you say there's a number of things that are linked directly to productivity. So the Made Smarter programme, the Digitalisation Grant Fund and the Productivity Improvement are all specifically targeted to support businesses improve their productivity. Now that doesn't automatically mean automation. A lot of it is about digital transformation. The companies better use their systems, better use their data to make better decisions. But this isn't about... It's important that this is allowing companies to grow and redeploy staff into higher value roles. And that's a key part of it. Again, that'll link back to the skills in terms of upskilling those people to take in these more higher value roles as we try and replace some of those lower value roles with some of these productivity initiatives. But there's a very direct line. I think if we go back to the Professional Advisory Board, Makers are there. They were very strong advocates of the Made Smarter programme. They've seen that work in the UK. 97% of SMEs that go through that programme recorded uplift in productivity, which is why that's one of our core programmes. And then we're supplementing that with other schemes to make sure that right across the full reach of ME companies, from small locally owned SMEs to some of the larger SMEs, that there's support available to drive that forward.
But it is fair to say that increased productivity, which ultimately in many ways will lead to automisation, which is required to make those businesses viable to the longer term, that in doing so, it may not always result in the number of jobs that people might expect with the amount of investment that there is, but what it can do is increase revenue, and therefore revenue for public services. That's a fair assessment when it comes to some of these projects which are going to require quite a significant investment.
I think it's a fair assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Declan?
Thanks for the presentation. Going back to the earlier point around economic inactivity, I'm working on the basis that we have high levels of economic inactivity in the north and also a critical skill shortage. Raymond said that there was going to be a call for bids from training organisations in relation to creating programmes that would then provide the necessary skills training to link into the the overall programme and strategy. So to what extent have you built objective need into your criteria for the pursuit of bids, and how will you ensure that the training organisations selected in fact skew their focus towards areas of objective need, both in urban and rural areas across the north, so that we ensure that there is a direct trickle down into those categories of economic inactivity, the skills shortage, especially among young people, but in areas of greatest disadvantage?
I think in the first instance, it's working out at about 1.8 million a year for all of that upskilling, so it isn't going to be a huge amount of money. I think what we're having to do is ensure whatever we put in place builds on those existing schemes, both that we're supporting but also that DFC are supporting. I'm working with local government as well, particularly the LMPs through DFC, LEPs within DFE. So in terms of the objective need, we want to make sure that we align to what already is there, because we can come in and try and build an entire new infrastructure here, but we don't have a huge amount of money, and that would be foolish. It wouldn't be a good use of resources. So from our perspective, we want to look at what are the gaps there at the minute. So we know with those people who are in economic inactivity, there are a number of them who would get back into employment if there was the right support available. We look at what the existing support is out there. Are there areas that we can build in that? So is there things around women returners, for example, who would like to get back into work but need additional support around certain areas? So it's just looking at those things, and that's why we'd want to go through the sort of bidding process.
We're at the start of a process in terms of identifying how and the additionality that our investment will bring. Again, coming back to be clear, this is additional funding for stuff that we would not otherwise have done, not to fill shortages and existing funding gaps, but to bring forward and to try and meet the demand that we know we're going to create. So if this investment works, coming back to the points made earlier, this will create demand from companies for the right type of skills, and that's the challenge that we have to make sure that, and that comes back to the alignment piece. There's significant other investment going across from DFC and DFE into this area. How's this the additionality on the top of it?
I totally get the point about a limit of funding,
yeah,
and how that needs to be used. But equally, I think at all stages, particularly when there's new money, additional money, that can potentially make an added value contribution to upskilling, new jobs and overall productivity. I think that it's essential that organisations such as yourselves, when you're setting down the criteria and the eligibility, especially when bids are going out to established training organisations, that the funding is going to organisations that are absolutely committed in an affirmative way to dealing with clients within areas of objective need and greatest disadvantage. Otherwise, we run the risk of simply getting back on the merry-go-round again and recycling the old processes, and that's not to take away from the fact that there are many training organisations out there that are affirmatively committed to tackling objective need and to actually getting under the bonnet. But by the same token, if we don't look at this in an affirmative sense, you do run the risk of simply rinse and repeat. Thank you.
You good, Declan? Thank you. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of final points. You had mentioned the academy model, I think it was maybe Raymond in your answer there, where employers are supporting training, and it's something that was saw coming through under the papers around the Cantor Fitzgerald potential investment as a key selling point for Northern Ireland. So I just wanted to know around the academy model, what support does the department provide for these academies, and is that something that will continue into 26-27, or is there potential this could be cut out of budget?
Is this for the academy model for used by EIZ funding that was proposed, or a general point?
Well, just on a general point, but in particular on EIZ,
Okay,
because I presume it's the similar.
Yeah, generally, so the term academy is used by a lot of different things in Northern Ireland. From a department point of view, through the employer skills, assured skills academies, we would support the development of training aligned to what an employer's need would be. Individuals would then be put through a programme, could last from 6 to 12 weeks. They would receive a training allowance while they're on that, which the department would cover. The employer then would have helped design the curriculum, the course over that period, and at the end there would be an interview for that individual to then go for a job, and if they're successful, they're placed in that. There are academy models through councils. They don't always have the same guaranteed job interview or job security at the end, and don't always align to certain strict qualification requirements, which we in DFE would have as well.
What sort of budget would be like around that for the department? I'm just trying to understand, is that something that's
I
sustained
think at
or
the
likely to be
minute,
cut?
approximately the department is spending around 1.4 million on academies just across the year to support.
Well, thank you very much. And then as well, you had mentioned at the very start about a pilot. I was just looking through the papers there. Is it the collaboration with the Makers Alliance there? Is that the one you're talking about? And about 30 SMEs in some of the colleges. I just wanted to ask what sort of timescale is on that, or when we would expect to see?
So we kicked it off in December. We got the first project starting in January, so we went out to the colleges. We were able to work quite quickly with them and get something in place for January. It started already with a view that it should complete in the next month and a half. So
very good.
And that's working across the college network.
Yeah.
So they're providers. So this
It's
is
regional,
breadth,
that's across everywhere.
This is this breadth across.
Yes.
And it's a pump primer.
Yeah.
This is a pilot. This is just again making sure I know the criticism committee and others is like when's things happening. This is just to move, and a rightful criticism. We need to move forward at a pace alongside our big strategic agri projects. There are things that we could do quickly, and that's an example of where we have trying to build that momentum up with industry to say, look, it's starting.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear. And whenever that does come to conclusion, it would be great if you could share with the committee kind of the outworkings of the pilot and what it meant. And I suppose if you've already moved on the pilot, it sort of feeds into just my last question. I just was wanting to ask around this in terms of the Enhanced Investment Zone projects starting to roll out, when we'll start to see spend and see things coming back from them. So
I have a programme has been developed for the 9 years, but our momentum is this year we are call it ambitious. I know we said the last time we might have things done by September, but we are planning for, subject to private sector partners agreeing to have an announcement after the summer on a major, one of our anchor projects. That's gone through business case approval. We are in the process of doing that. But again, caveat it all, heavily dependent, private sector moves first. We are a minority funder in this.
No,
Okay,
thank
so
you
there's
very
commercial
much.
discussions ongoing about where that might be, etc. But
yeah, no, thank you very much for that, and it's good to hear that. It's good to hear in terms of the pilot project that even though there's specific clusters, it actually affects the whole of Northern Ireland, because ultimately we've got this opportunity here, and you want to see Northern Ireland as an entirety as a enhanced investment zone. And I want to thank you all very much. I think all members have come in with everything they wanted to ask. It's been a really informative and encouraging session as to action taking place and plans, timescales, things getting fed back to committee. So Kieran, Raymond, Adrian and Brendan, just want to thank you very much for coming here today, and look forward to having you back and hearing a bit more how things are going. Thanks very much.
thank you.
Okay, so Clark, do you want to summarise any actions there?
So, Chairperson, our committee consents right to the department just seeking sight of the economic impact assessment for the EIZ, and also an update on the outworking of the pilot that they referred to. Happy with that? Great.
Yeah.
Lovely.
That's great, thanks very much. Just to reflect on Padraig and others, it's a good session. Good answers there, good information. So, okay, so we'll move on to our next point, Onshore Petroleum Licensing Bill, and we have some oral and written evidence in from the Department for the Economy. Members of the committee will now receive this evidence in respect of the Petroleum Exploration and Licensing Repeal Bill, which is expected to be introduced shortly. I think, did we say the first stage 13th of April, or?
It's not on the order
It's
paper.
not on the
but
order paper,
I hope it is.
Okay, so soon after Easter. So members, if I could refer you to the clerk's cover note at page 53. Also, members, if you check your pack there, we've got a copy of the Onshore Petroleum Exploration and Licensing Repeal Bill, an explanatory and financial memorandum at page 59, previous departmental briefing paper at page 72, and other papers relating to the previous consultation document at page 93. So at this point, I just want to welcome to the meeting Jimmy Graham, Director of Business, Decarbonisation and Gas, Minerals and Renewable Electricity, Department for Economy, Mark Wilson, Head of Minerals and Petroleum Branch, Department for the Economy, and John McManus, Minerals and Petroleum branch from the Department for the Economy. It's great to have you here for this briefing, and I just want to invite you to make some opening remarks, take us through the bill and what is happening on this just now.
Chair, members of the committee, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the Petroleum Exploration and Licensing Repeal Bill. I'll give a brief overview of the content of the bill, its practical effect, and the key provisions that may assist the committee in its scrutiny once the bill is introduced. In summary, the bill introduces a ban on issuing licences for all forms of onshore petroleum exploration and production in Northern Ireland by removing the licences and provisions from the Petroleum Production Act, Northern Ireland, 1964, and revoking related regulations. It brings the existing petroleum licensing regime to an end by removing the Department's power to grant licences and removing the Department's right to search and bore for and get petroleum under the 1964 Act. This means it will not be possible for individuals or companies to explore for or produce oil and gas in the onshore area of Northern Ireland under a petroleum licence, regardless of the technique used. The bill also makes a small number of consequential changes to remove now redundant references in related legislation. Importantly, the property in petroleum remains vested in the Department, and that position is unchanged by the bill. On process, the bill has received Secretary of State consent, and the Attorney-General has confirmed it is within the legislative competence of the Assembly. As the committee will be aware, work to bring forward the bill is underway, and then subject to that Assembly scheduling, officials have asked that that first stage be timetabled after Easter recess. So, Chair, members, thank you for your time this morning. We're very happy to take your questions on the bill's provisions and to support the committee's scrutiny as the legislation progresses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for that update, and we appreciate the status quo of the importing and consuming of fossil fuels at the current levels is unsustainable. But given the current volatility around the energy market, we need to be conscious of the optics of closing down permanently what some may see as another source. Is this review and this legislation progressing live to the current situation, or was it prepared at a point in time and has sat there?
Yes, and it has progressed, I guess, through the previous energy crisis as well, related in 2022. So I think over a 60-year period, there has been, since the 1964 Act, there's been 30 licences, around 30 licences awarded to carry out exploration activities to a varying degree, and through all of those, there was insufficient oil and gas found for commercial development. So I think that's very clear evidence. The independent research that started in 2020 indicates as well that to get to commercially viable petroleum development would take 10 to 15 years. So even if there is a current crisis, commercially develop something would take quite a long time. And then furthermore, even if oil and gas were to be found in a commercial quantity here, it would be sold in international markets and therefore would make no difference to price for local consumers.
Thank you. The 2024 consultation document had indicated that an exploration ban was to be considered by the executive and then outstanding applications reviewed by the executive. I just wonder, could you explain what the situation is then for the current outstanding applications?
Yeah, so in the one of the clauses in the bill addresses this in terms of the active applications. So yeah, there was two older applications lodged in 2016. The clause sets out how to deal with any of those applications and the potential for the department to refund those and so the cost of those applications, and then refund them with interest if that's applicable. So that will be considered after the legislation is put in place and any of those applications that are there.
Okay. Would that be a normal time scale for those, sitting 10 years?
So in terms of those applications, when they were received, they were considered. Then the review happened in 2020 as well. To actually look, there was a moratorium put in place in that time frame as well, so they could not be progressed.
Thank you. And just looked in and around the research on this, and it seemed to show that there a low development of conventional vertical wells would have had a limited adverse environmental impact. So just wanted to ask why the legislative ban on all forms of petroleum exploration and production is the department's preferred option, rather than the option to retain the opportunity to explore and extract conventional hydrocarbons.
So I think through the consultation there was overwhelming support for, I think it was the fourth option, was a full ban on all forms of exploration and production. So that's why that recommendation was put forward and then agreed by the executive.
Okay, so just the consultation response, what sort of volume was there of the responses there?
383.
382.
Yeah.
95% supported the preferred option of the
Yeah.
moratorium and ban.
It's a good strong response to a consultation
Yeah, it
on
is.
an issue, definitely, absolutely. And just a final one from me, just wanted to ask, would the proposed legislative ban have any impact on the geothermal boreholes and hydraulic fracturing, which is used for other reasons?
This bill only applies to oil and gas.
Okay.
However, in terms of geothermal, the geological conditions here, it's very, very unlikely that fracking would be required in that particular instance.
Yeah, no, it's grand. It's just trying to understand bringing this forward, if it would have some potential unintended reaction elsewhere. Thank you very much, Padraig.
Thanks, Chair, and look, very much welcome this forward. There's no outstanding questions from my end. I suppose what I wanted to do was to welcome this and actually to acknowledge the fact that the consultation response, as the Chair said, has been extremely strong, has been robust in the number of consultation responses that you've got back, but also the fact that they are overwhelmingly in support of this as well. I think the clarification that you gave was really useful around the fact that of the 30 explorations that have been done over the past number of years, that none of those came back with any measure of success. So look, this is a good piece of legislation. It's one of 8 pieces that the Minister's bringing forward. I think that's really strong. And I suppose just in the context of this, it's important to note that this isn't a piece of standalone legislation. This is, I suppose, there's a whole suite of measures that the Minister's bringing forward about renewables, and hopefully that this will actually put the focus back on the renewable energies and allow for a greater focus on them. So, say some of the questions have already been raised, but just to very much welcome this. I think it's a really, really strong piece of legislation. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Padraig. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose when I look at something like this, I'm always very conscious that it's trying to view it with a form of balance, especially when we look at the current situation, as the Chair has said. And I think I'm right in saying, you've talked about 30 licences granted since 1964, none of which you say has had any relative success in terms of exploration. And I suppose probably what I'm trying to get my head around is the number of 30 in comparison, for example, let's say onshore in Scotland, for example, or other regions. How does that 30 compare, and is 30 licences and explorations, is it representative of there is nothing there, or would you require quite a significant more number of licences to really see if there was potential for onshore petroleum?
I think that it's an indication that there's nothing there that could be commercially viable.
Yeah, and if you
more so than nothing being there, but it's the commercial viability of any target.
So the commercial viability, when you look then at other regions, how would that compare? So if I look at Scotland, for example, onshore licences, how many have been granted there in the same time period?
I don't have that information.
So I'm trying to find a comparative. That's the point. I'm trying to see if whether or not that 30 figure is representative to say, well, look, there is nothing that's commercially viable in comparison to other geographical regions in similar size and scale.
We can certainly take that away and provide you with some of that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a key distinction, obviously, between onshore and offshore licence requirements, and I'm still very much of the view that the current UK policy, whereby we're importing, given the ability of other countries to import natural resources such as oil and gas, rather than using our own potential to do so, actually, in the current energy scenario, does not really help consumers today. And I'm trying to ascertain whether or not some of the safety concerns that have been highlighted are replicated in other regions, particularly one of the applications I think was at Lower Loch Ness, I think, yeah. What was the main concerns coming forward from the consultation responses in terms of environmental issues brought through in this consultation? Water quality, was it?
There was a whole host, and it was right across the spectrum, from the impact on agriculture, the impact on fisheries, and right across the spectrum.
There was no overarching. The overarching theme was they were the same style response, where the generative response, in terms of there was sometimes with consultation responses you get a generated response.
No, where there's a generated response, we would have highlighted that in the report.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
David?
Thank you. I just want to put on the record, I absolutely support this. From Alliance, we want to see the end of this. And again, I sort of echo the words that I hope this allows us to move towards the renewables at pace and the Department of Focus there. So, Jimmy, you've had some back and forwards in other committees, so happy, really, really delighted to support this. Just to clarify one thing, just to take it a little bit further, the geothermal, this is not included in this whatsoever. No, yeah, so this is simply fossil fuel stuff. So, listen, absolutely support this, and we'll support this, and hopefully this gets through, and the department can focus on moving forward with energy security right across the island. So, thank you.
Chair, could I just, as a point that you had raised earlier about the two applications that were in the system, does legislating increase the threat of potential successful legal action in that regard? Has that been given consideration by the department?
It has, and I think drafting the legislation in terms of the clause that applications will be withdrawn whenever this legislation goes into effect. I don't want to speculate on any potential litigation further down the line, but the process that we've worked through in drafting the legislation with with the support of the department and wider has got us to this point. And we think it's the best place we can be in at this moment in time.
Okay. Diana. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for coming in. I'm thinking of my own area and from Ananoma District Council. In planning, there is already a presumption against unconventional extraction. How does this legislation align with that, with the planning policy?
I think it will align, absolutely. If that's in your constituency, if that's the case, this will absolutely align. Yeah.
Just as Diana has raised that point, is that something? Has there been engagement between the department and, be the Department of Infrastructure at a strategic level in planning, or our local councils, as to how this interacts? Because I think it is a.
There has been consultation with the councils throughout this whole process.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's grand. Thank you very much. No one else has indicated? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to this coming forward after Easter in the Assembly. So, Jimmy, Mark and John, thank you very much for coming to committee today to take our questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any actions?
Yeah, Chair, is the committee just content to write to the department, just in line with Mr. Buckley's question about number of licences in similar areas, Scotland and other similar geographical areas, for a committee's information?
Yeah, I suppose the main thrust of my point is whether or not 30 licences is a representative example to deem no commercial viability in comparison with other regions.
Chairperson.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Chairperson. Also, look, the bill hasn't been introduced yet, and I expected it will. It'll go to second stage. I'm guessing it. You tell me. Will it pass? I suspect it might. So then we'd be into committee stage. I'm not sure the level of responses. We might get quite a lot, from you for just interested parties, just want to talk about it. So could I ask members, would they kindly hold the date, 24th of June, for the evening? And what we might do, if members are agreeable, is have an informal evidence-taking event. So if there were a lot of groups that came back and wanted to talk about this and maybe might not want to give formal evidence, we could just hold that. We could have something in Parliament Buildings. My understanding is I'm also expecting the utility regulator bill to materialise. The stakeholders are pretty similar, so we could maybe just do that on one day and just take quite a lot of evidence quite quickly. The view being to do this properly, robustly, take formal evidence too, but just try and get that done and in the books and done, given that we have a big legislative programme, as members are aware. So if you would kindly, members are agreeable,
You're
hold the date.
suggesting the evening time?
Yes, it would be.
That's
so
the Wednesday, the 24th of June, which would have the committee meeting in the morning, and then you're suggesting
You could
hold the
go-
evening time. Is everyone content to take a look?
Yeah,
so-
we still have enough time before recess to kind of process that as well, don't we? Before summer recess.
Yeah, you'd still be in your committee.
process the bill. Well,
I'm just thinking in terms of getting so if we get a large volume of responses that day, does that give us enough time as committee to kind of meet, go through that and so on prior
People
to
would
summer recess?
probably respond in advance of that, and that would be our engagement event, maybe, just to speak to them.
Yeah.
I think if we put it out that way, that we've already had time to, read through it, have it in advance, and then that, just to give that engagement. Is that kind of what you're...
the chairperson's absolutely right. Just to be clear, this very much depends when second stage happens. I hope it happens really soon. I think it might be the 28th of April, but I'm just guessing. So that would give us an opportunity to launch a committee stage, maybe concluded around about the 24th of June. So you'd have this sort of initial chat, and then you get a formal evidence taking, which might be 1st of July, and then early in September, with a view to getting both of those bills done if members are happy and they're content. So that will then leave us time to do the other bills. But it's going to be tight. Yeah, there's going to be lots of work to do.
See, that's what I was thinking. And in terms of the September evidence session, do we have to separate out the one from the start of July till September, or could we, if we, for example, moved the 24th back to the 17th, would that allow us to do both the two that you're proposing, the July and September sessions, prior to summer recess, and just allow more time if we needed to meet over summers? I'm just trying to think of how can we get this stuff through as quickly as possible. Do you know what I mean?
Was there a reason for that date? Or?
Yeah, I want to give, assuming second stage is 28th of April, I want to give stakeholders 8 weeks. That's actually not that much. Usually they want 3 months, but there's a lot to do. So we'll go 8 weeks, give everybody plenty of time, and we can then give a good going over.
I'm happy with,
Yeah, and that's the only time I can get. It's the 24th. It's the only time the long gallery is free.
It's not.
So.
It was actually free on that date.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think it would. Yeah. But I totally take Padraig's point. But we need, to be clear, get your detail in advance, and if there's anything that we need to do in advance of it. But it's a good opportunity, I think, for public facing, bringing everyone together, and would everyone be in agreement to move ahead with booking that for that evening and keeping it in the diaries? Super. Okay. Thanks very much. Is that everything there on that? On the back of that one?
Thank you, Chairperson.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so thank you. Moving to point 8 on the agenda. We have the Education Student Support Amendment Regulations. Members, the Department has laid a statutory rule, the Education Student Support Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2026. The rule is subject to negative resolution procedure and would come into effect on the 10th of April 2026. Members refer you to the clerk's cover note at page 373 and outlining the rule, which does a number of things. It increases the maximum disability support allowance from £25,000 to £27,000 and extends eligibility. It increases the undergraduate maximum tuition fee loan to £4,985 in line with changes to student fees in Northern Ireland and match loans to fee increases for Northern Ireland students studying in GB. It increased the maximum maintenance grant and student loan and the special support grant by 2.7% for Northern Ireland students studying in Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland or GB. The committee noted the SL1 in February and launched a call for views on citizen space. No responses were recorded. The committee was content for the rule to be made on the 11th of March 2026. The Department advises that the laid rule does not deviate from the original proposed, except that an additional paragraph has been added to the explanatory memorandum at paragraph 3.2, which explicitly outlines the uplift to tuition fee loan rates for part-time and distance learning courses. Members, have you any questions or concerns on this? John?
Just a query, Chair. Obviously, with the, I'm just getting it up here, the disability support allowance increase, the extended eligibility, do we have more detail about what the extended eligibility is, or is it just beyond your cover note where you talk about one-to-one medical help? But that's already there, is my understanding, and the specialist equipment.
Yes.
The cost of travel, is there anything additional?
I think, yes, it's that. Yes, there's all that. The sports cost of travel. It does actually tell you something. I just can't remember what it was.
Yeah, recent exams.
Yes, reset exams. Thank you.
Yes.
Extended, that was not there beforehand?
That's, I think,
That's
correct. Yeah.
That's my.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks, members. Well done.
Okay.
And is there an indication of, well, I suppose a rough, so obviously it costs 4.5 million per annum at present. Is there an indication of what
The additional cost.
additional costs would be if to include that particular?
Right. Okay. I'm just. I think they probably will have told us, but I'm just.
I couldn't see it, so.
Sorry. Wrong background. Blah blah blah. Do you know what? We can ask the department to break it down. I don't think they have. So we can ask the department to provide us with that breakdown on the disability support allowance.
Okay.
Breaking the
Anyone else?
costs.
Any?
I'm not holding it up, I'm just.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
No. Just one detail.
No, absolutely. Okay, so members, if you're content, I would like to put the motion to the committee that the Committee for the Economy has considered SR 2026-56, the Education Student Support, etc. Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2026, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Committee agreed? Agreed? Thank you. Okay, so, and clerk's picked up that point, we'll get the breakdown of that figure. Thank you. So moving to item 9 on the agenda, the Employment Rights Increase of Limits Order, Northern Ireland 2026. Members, the Department has laid a statutory rule, the Employment Rights Increase of Limits Order, Northern Ireland 2026. The rule is not subject to any procedure in the Assembly, and it will come into operation on the 6th of April 2025. Members, the clerk's cover note at page 386 outlines the detail. The rule revises the limits on awards and payments under certain employment rights legislation in line with the Retail Price Index 4.5%. The committee launched a related call for views on citizen space, and there were no responses. The committee previously agreed on the 4th of March 2026 that it was content for the department to make the rule. The department advises that the laid rule does not deviate from the original proposal. Members, have you any questions or concerns to raise? No? Okay, thank you. So members content to note? Agreed? Thank you. Okay, so item 10 on the agenda, the Statutory Parental Bereavement Pay General Amendment Regulations. Members, the clerk's cover note is at page 396 on this item. Members, the department has laid the statutory rule entitled the Statutory Parental Bereavement Pay General Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2026, and this is subject to confirmatory resolution, meaning that it came into effect as soon as it was laid on the 19th of March 2026, but is subject to a subsequent confirmation resolution, which means that it will be debated in plenary and voted upon. This rule amends other regulations and removes unnecessary expiry arrangements. The department advises that this is part of a wider package of legislative measures establishing statutory parental bereavement pay as an entitlement for bereaved parents. The committee forewent its usual delegated legislation process, whereby a call for evidence would be undertaken on the draft rule, and also previously agreed that it was content for this rule to be made. The department advises that the laid rule does not deviate from the original proposal. Members, have you any questions or concerns? No? Okay, so then I'll put the motion to the committee that the Committee for the Economy has considered SR 2026-58, the Statutory Parental Bereavement Pay General Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2026, and subject to the ESR's report, recommends that it be confirmed by the Assembly. Is committee agreed? Agreed. Thank you.
Chairperson, just in terms, sorry about this, just there's the committee did just set aside its usual delegated legislation procedure. Just to be clear, department's very good with this. I've just been talking to other clerks. Department is actually much better than most other departments about complying with this, but they just made a wee mistake. And if the committee's content, I'll just write to them and just ask them not to do that again. It was a minor thing, but they just did. So if the committee are content for me just to write to them, I will do. But just to be clear, I'm not having to do at them. They're actually very good at delegated legislation. They're much better than other departments.
What was it? Was it?
What they're supposed to do is when we set aside our process, they're supposed to say this is at the request of the minister, and they didn't say that. That was it. That was all that they did. But I think it was at the request of the minister. They just didn't put it in writing.
Okay, no, that's grand. Doesn't affect the substance of it,
Not
but
at all,
I think
no.
we'll be content for that to be made in a procedural note. Yeah, everyone agreed?
Is that agreed, members?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, so moving on to correspondence. Quite a lot of it here. So members, an index of the correspondence is provided from page 408 of the meeting packs at item 1. So item 2 at page 413, members ask you to note the ministerial correspondence in respect of the utility regulator, the support for decarbonisation preparation bill to be introduced in the week commencing the 20th of April 2026. Is the committee content to note pending a departmental briefing on the 22nd of April? Agreed?
Sorry, members, sorry, Chair, this is my mistake. Actually, I don't know if it will be introduced then, because I think the 20th of April might be an opposition day, so it may be, we may have to move that to the 29th, but you're content to note.
Content in principle? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so item 3 at page 421, members are asked to consider a departmental response in respect of the Belfast Works Connect request for £1.7 million of funding for economic and activity programmes. The department refers to the resource capital split for the Local Growth Fund and ongoing negotiation with the UK Government. Is the committee content to forward the departmental response to the Belfast Works Connect? Content? Thank you. Item 4, page 224 of your pack, members asked to consider a departmental response in respect of the proposed establishment of a Fermanagh Chamber of Commerce. The department suggested that this might be done through the local economic partnership, but it is for the LEP to agree. Is the committee content to forward the departmental response to the Fermanagh Business Group? Content? Thank you. Item 5 at page 427, members are asked to note a copy of the current departmental organisational structure. Further appointments are to be made likely before summer recess. The department advises that it has 362.8 full-time equivalent vacancies, which equates to 25% of its approved staffing level. The Permanent Secretary previously suggested that it may be necessary to freeze recruitment in order to control the pay bill through natural wastage. Members may wish to consider whether such a strategy may impact on the department's ability to develop and deliver policy, and whether a more transformative approach may be required. On this, I just wanted to raise across in Finance Committee, we're just commencing actually this afternoon an inquiry into the civil service and a lot of the HR functions, and that will look at the Department of Finance and the shared service back office function and the interface with different departments. And I wonder, in terms of this, on the back of this correspondence for the Department for the Economy, would this committee be content to write to the Department for Economy HR to ask as to when they last reviewed their staffing structure, because they've an approved staffing level. We've seen it in different departments how they're lacking in some of the specialised skills in certain areas, different grades, and just in terms of this department to ask what has the Department for Economy done to review their staff and grades and skill sets in terms of themselves in order to feed back to the Department of Finance. Would you be content to write into?
Sure, I think so, because we saw it, I think about 3 weeks ago, we were made aware that the support wasn't there in some of the departments. I think it was energy, so I do think it'd be very important.
Yeah, and it would be useful, I think, for us as a committee just to get that profile of where the gaps are within the staffing here. Okay, so as a committee, yeah, Padraig?
I think, yeah, no issue with that. I think acknowledging that, you know, when we did ask Energy, I think it's important to acknowledge that they noted apprenticeships and they noted that staff were being brought on in the summer. I think they mentioned July. So even just, I think there's no harm in asking and getting more clarity on it, but I think we need to recognise that work is being done on that, and that's in situ. So even if we're framing it as what has been done and what's going to be done in the next while, because I just think it's important that, you know, when these processes are in situ and ongoing, that we acknowledge that as well.
Or even if we frame it in a way as to we're writing to the Department for Economy's HR as to what is the current staffing situation, where are the gaps, what plans are in place, and what are the plans for the future, and what support may be needed, because obviously we heard from, you know, the skills piece just now, and it would be good to see the examples of those coming through the department. So something to that effect. Are we agreed? Yeah, David?
Yeah, I think that's the critical part. The historic bit is is what it is, but it's the bit of change that we want to see in every department. Every section of the department is coming through, and the key bits of legislation come through, and they're not been resourced, but yet other bits seem to have loads. So that's the bit of change that we need to.
I think it's a
get
good
cracking.
opportunity for the committee to support the staff and structure and what's coming through in the department as well, just by shining the light on it. So is everyone agreed with? Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. So item 6 at page 431, members asked to note a departmental response providing a breakdown of the impact of reciprocal tariffs applied by the United States. Are the committee content to note? Yeah. Item 7, page 444, members are asked to note a copy of correspondence from the Department for the Economy to the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs in respect of reciprocal tariffs by the USA. Is the committee content to note? Yeah. Item 8, page 450, members are asked to note a copy of correspondence from the House of Lords, Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland seeking an update on the US global reciprocal tariffs and implications for the Windsor Framework and Northern Ireland. Is the committee content to note? Yeah. Thank you. Item 9 at page 452, members are asked to note a departmental response further to the committee's request for sight of the Cantor Fitzgerald papers. The department has provided a large number of related documents. Some are heavily redacted. Some appear to have been provided twice with slight different redactions. The timeline seems to commence in November 2023 with documents covering meetings with Cantor Fitzgerald in February, March 2024 and 25. It appears that until the 11th of March 2025, the department had been expecting the investment to go ahead with hiring to begin in March 2025 and to complete in 2027. An announcement was to be scheduled for spring 2025. Cantor Fitzgerald advised of a hold on the investment on the 11th of March 2025. A formal withdrawal letter of offer is dated on the 7th of May 2025. Members may also wish to note that Howard Lubnick had been the CEO and apparently remains a 60% shareholder in Cantor Fitzgerald, and his son replaced him as CEO when he became a Secretary of Commerce in the Trump administration. And is the committee Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. And look, this is a considerable dump of documents. I mean, I think it's 150 pages in our pack. I've also received Freedom of Information Acts in my own right as an MLA, as I know others are doing so. And, what appears quite clear is that this investment, this 300 jobs, highly paid jobs to the Northern Ireland economy, was significantly advanced by both InvestNI and the Minister's Department. There had been quite a considerable engagement with the Department going back even before the Minister's time, but certainly one of the things that I have found very interesting, which was not told to us via the representations by both the Department and the Minister, that 2 weeks prior to the Minister's meeting in New York, that the Minister and her SPAD and other officials met with Cantor Fitzgerald representatives in this very building. The Minister commented in the meeting note on the positivity of a company like Cantor Fitzgerald coming to Northern Ireland and offering so many good jobs. Her SPAD appears to suggest the information around a potential communications plan around the announcement. 2 weeks later, the Minister goes to New York and the meeting note is 57 words long, okay, and redacted in part. So I think it raises huge questions. I mean, some of these freedom of informations are completely redacted. Therefore, the ability for this committee to scrutinise and get to the bottom of what happened, these 300 jobs in a 2-week period, is severely limited and frustrating. And we still need to know, and I think it's going to take some more time to go through this particular dump of documents in detail, was there any discussion on American foreign policy at the meeting of the 11th of March between the Minister and Cantor Fitzgerald representatives? This smells of maybe incompetence at worst, but we certainly need to follow up as both as a committee and indeed as I progress through studying of these documents. I think it will prompt further discussion here at this committee to understand why 300 jobs were lost to the Northern Ireland economy, which appear, given the extensive interaction with InvestNI, was all but secured until that meeting on the 11th of March. And I think we, and indeed the people that we represent, have a right to know why.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. And there's a lot of information to get through. Declan?
Thanks, Diane. Yeah, well, I think Jonathan's quite right to caveat his remarks, and he probably needs to heavily caveat his remarks with perception appearance. And I think what we have to do here is ground our approach on the basis of fact, not supposition or opinion or aspirant opinion. Of course, I've seen the yes, I've seen that. So if we track the salient period out, there was a letter of offer issued by INI to Cantor on the 19th of February, and then the meeting did indeed take place on the 25th of February between Cantor here and the Minister and senior officials. And then there was a 2-week interval leading up to the meeting in March in New York. Cantor at that meeting, because this is reflected in the non-redacted version, that it wished to have more time to consider its investment. So there was no indication, even based upon the redactions, that the bottom had fallen out of the deal in the 11th of March. Quite the reverse. Cantor asked for more time. And then there was a further interval, an extended interval, between the 11th of March and the 7th of May, when Cantor wrote to confirm by quote-unquote mutual agreement that the letter of offer is withdrawn and notifying its intention to proceed with no further investment. And then 1 week later, an unnamed Invest NI official wrote back confirming that that was the case. So I think what's relevant here is that there has been a mutual agreement between Cantor, if the characterisation of the letter is to be fully understood, and Invest NI, as the agency which would have been responsible for leading on the negotiation in relation not just to this investment but to all investments on a global basis. The meeting on the 11th of March, and again in the non-redacted version of the minute, referenced that Howard Lutnick had moved on from his position as CEO to take up the role as US Secretary of Commerce. That transition actually took place on the 18th of February. That was one day before the letter of offer was issued by Invest NI to Cantor. So I think that it is reasonable to reflect on the significance of Howard Lutnick's decision to move out of the position of CEO into the role of the Secretary of Commerce, to champion the America First policy which had already been adopted by the new administration. And I think it's really important to also record that the letter of offer which was issued was at a time when Cantor had still not closed on its investment. So if Howard Lutnick took up his post on the 18th of February, a day before the letter of offer was issued, then I think that is salient to whatever has transpired between the 19th of February, the meeting of the 11th of March, and then the issuing of the letter on the 7th of May by Cantor to advise that by mutual agreement it was now discontinuing its interest in pursuing with the investment. So I think the nub of this is the mutual agreement. And what influenced the mutual agreement between Cantor and Invest NI to discontinue with its potential investment? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, and Padraig?
Thanks, Chair. And Declan has laid out the detail and the chronology very clearly there. I suppose from my end, the mutual agreement is also the key part of this, in that the mutual agreement was not only from Cantor Fitzgerald, but it was a mutual agreement with Invest, who are, by definition, our investment agency. So I think that's important in contextualising this as well. The other thing is, and I've been doing some research into this, is around the Cantor Fitzgerald model. And we know that we have a number of companies who are US based who invest here. Cantor Fitzgerald don't appear to have made any investments outside of the US in the period between then and now, which would suggest, as Declan mentioned, that this was a broader policy. So I think that's really the critical part of this. It's being portrayed as if there's some sort of broader narrative here. I think that that's deeply unhelpful, and I think it's deeply unhelpful for a number of reasons. Firstly, when I speak to other US-based companies in Derry, right across the north, they're actually suggesting a counter-narrative, one that actually they've been getting considerable support, encouragement from both the department, from Invest, and from the Minister as well. But I also think that this is an issue which is deeply commercially sensitive. And when we look at the number of businesses, our role as the Economy Committee here is as a scrutiny committee, yes, but it's also to support investment here. It's also to drive forward investment and to encourage investment here. And I think what we are at risk of doing is actually undermining the opportunity for other companies to invest. Because investors are very, very clearly saying that they do not want details of every investment. This is commercially sensitive information. This is between the company and Invest NI as the investment agency. So this is commercially sensitive stuff that should really be between them. When we bring this before an Economy Committee, we are sending a signal to other investors and other potential investors that we are not open for business, that we are going to scrutinise and look at things which really are beyond the remit of this committee. And I think what's important is that we don't discourage investment from other sources when we have so many companies, bodies, agencies here who have long-term investment. And even we look at the last year, 100 new jobs in Napier AI, Spider Rock, iVerify, all investments that have been brought in through Invest, supported by the Economy Department and supported by the Minister. So this is a standalone case, and I think it's very important that we don't spook other businesses and that we don't send out a signal to other businesses that investment here is going to come, every investment here is going to come before this committee.
Thanks, Padraig. John, you want to
Thank you, Chair. And I'm glad to see that Sinn Féin representatives are now taking this issue serious, that they want to actually look at the timeline rather than outright dismissal that the jobs ever existed in the first place. Declan made a point about the 11th of March meeting in which the Minister went to New York to unveil 300 jobs. He said it was unredacted. Well, it is redacted in part, but I think anybody serious that wants to look at the details surrounding a meeting where 300 jobs were about to be announced, where there was a meeting in this building 2 weeks previous, where the Minister herself was glowing of the potential of these jobs and the significant value of having Cantor Fitzgerald invest in Northern Ireland, that 2 weeks later we get a 57-word meeting note. And one of the notes is 4 bullet points. One of them, discussion on current geopolitical issues. I think we have a right to know what those geopolitical issues were. Now, Padraig has said that this is not the place to discuss this. Well, if the Scrutiny Committee for the Department for the Economy, who has responsibility for jobs, investment, Invest NI, is not the place to discuss where on earth 300 high-paying jobs went to the Northern Ireland economy, where on earth is the appropriate place? So I make no apology for continuing on this theme to get truth, to get accountability, and to ensure that Northern Ireland consumers and businesses understand that we are a place that's welcome for business, because Cantor Fitzgerald has employees in Dublin. Cantor Fitzgerald has employees in London. So the question is, why not Belfast? And why, when there has been significant work done over a lengthy period of time, Invest NI officials to their credit, if you look at any of these documents, had invested a serious amount of time and no doubt resource to try to attract these jobs to Belfast. All of a sudden, at the final hurdle, they were lost, and we are none the wiser as to why, and I think it's only appropriate that we continue to probe to ensure that we get accountability.
Shall Declan?
Yeah, and I think that's appropriate, but if you're going to probe them, probe in the right direction. Look in the right place.
Not the place you want me to look.
So no, I'm not telling you where to look.
Right.
I'm actually looking at what's in front of me.
You're not?
Yes, I am indeed. Don't tell me what I'm looking at and what I'm not looking at. But what you should do is acquaint yourself with all of the relevant information, and as opposed to jumping the gun and looking to get to where you want to be, then I think you have to assess this on the basis of the available information. And at the meeting that you speak of on the 11th
Just
of
remind
March,
us through the chair, members.
on the 11th of March, and I spoke about the unredacted version because there are redactions. There are also other elements of the information which are unredacted. I think the first point that is unredacted refers to Howard Lutnick's stepping down as CEO and moving into the position of US Secretary of Commerce some 2 to 2.5 weeks previously. And what I think you need to focus on, what we need to focus on in order that we can ensure that Jonathan doesn't take us all down a rabbit hole here, is the basis of the mutual agreement that was made quite clearly between the prospective investor and the lead agency responsible for negotiating the potential delivery of the investment. And I would remind us that investors are entirely allowed to make their decisions on the basis of commercial sensitivities, which may be fluid, and changing commercial priorities, which also may be fluid, which may very well feed directly into what I think is the relevant period here between the 11th of March, when Cantor said they still wanted time to conclude on whether they intended to proceed with the investment, and then the issuing of the letter on the 7th of May, when they discontinued their intent to pursue the investment, with reference to the mutual agreement, which one must assume is a mutual agreement which was established between those who were leading for Cantor and those who were leading for InvestNI. So perhaps the focus needs to be establishing from InvestNI what was the basis of the mutual agreement that was established between both parties, which influenced, potentially on the basis of commercial sensitivities best known to Cantor, but not potentially excluding the decision of the CEO to move posts, to move into government, and then a government which was championing a policy of America first, with the focus of investment being in America as opposed to this part of Ireland or anywhere else, that our focus needs to be on establishing what does that mean. And the people I think who are best able to clarify that, subject to not compromising commercial sensitivities, is InvestNI.
Thank you, Declan. And again, just in the interest of keeping order and establishing what the committee's role and position is here, just remember, just keep it coming through the chair. So we've got Padraig and then Diana wanting to come in on this here before we decide the action. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. And I suppose just to reiterate, this is an issue that doesn't suit the narrative that has been put forward, and that's the difficulty, is that the responses and the detailed responses do not suit the narrative that's being put forward here. The fact is that the 300 jobs were prospective jobs. They weren't lost because they weren't actually in situ. They hadn't existed. They were potential jobs. So when we look at this, I think the point that Declan made around the international context of this is very important, because there's very, very clearly an issue here which other members might want to conflate with other issues. But this is about the fact that a decision was taken by mutual agreement that doesn't suit the narrative that other members want to put forward. But my understanding is that no new jobs were brought forward outside of the United States in the period of the last year. So I think that contextualises all of it. And just to clarify the point that I made earlier, because I don't want to be misrepresented, of course we can look at investment here. Of course we can look at jobs and prospective jobs and existing jobs here. What I don't think is the role of this committee is actually to be trying to go against the wishes of businesses, the wishes of Invest NI, and to try and bring detail into this committee which actually is irrelevant to this committee, which is commercially sensitive to that company, but also information which will put other investors off. Because what we are at risk of doing here today is sending a signal to other investors that we are closed for business, that we are not open for trade, and that we will look at every single investment that comes here with a fine-tooth comb. What we should be doing is welcoming investment, encouraging businesses to come, looking at the businesses that we have heard from, that we have visited, that have such strengths and such roots in this area, and actually increasing our opportunities with them rather than trying to deflect. And because this issue really is not about the detail in this. This is an opportunity. The narrative does not match what other members want to get from this information. And we are going down a rabbit hole here. I think it's unhelpful, and I think it sends out a very, very poor message and poor signal to other businesses.
Thank you, Diana, and then David, and then we'll draw a position here.
Thank you, Chair. And Padraig, I'm glad that you recognise the close relationship we have with the US and the value of US investment. But I'm a bit astonished that Jacqueline's saying, making the assumption that this was to do with an America First policy from Howard Lutnick, who moved to that role within the cabinet, and I think that is not helpful. So I think in the interests of resolution, further transparency really is needed because it can't be evaded. Thank you, Chair.
David?
I'm just concerned, sitting listening to both this has been tried to make political gain out of it rather than actually worried about creating jobs here, and what people actually look in community and out of this building is for leadership and for the opportunities to come and for growth. And we heard about the investment zone earlier and the targeted approach, and that should be our focus. I agree actually on one point with Jonathan that this is the place for stuff like this to be discussed, but not for political gain. It's got to be for the betterment of people, and that's where we should be landing. So I'm not sure what the ask is of moving forward. But
well, if I could try to bring it together just from a chair position, everyone has spoken to it. We've got the papers in the pack. Some think that they are clear, some think they're heavily redacted. There's other papers that are out there as well. Much has been said about the role of this committee. Padraig said this committee is to emphasise the wishes of businesses. And I believe the role of this committee is to scrutinise the department's role, the department's actions, that of Invest NI, transparency, as Diana said, and openness. So to try to bring it back to that, we've asked for information as a committee. We've got it through. It's redacted in part. In terms of an action going forward on this, there is a lot of information. Do we want to take it away and consider it further and bring it back? Do we want to ask for more on the back of some of the points of the information that has been provided or has been redacted? And just in terms of actions for us as this committee as to what we're bringing to us, to an action for this committee. So Jonathan.
Yeah, sure, I'm content at this stage to further interrogate what we have in front of us before I would bring an action point to the committee. That's the position I'm in. I just want to get to the bottom of it. I want to get to the truth. I want to know exactly why jobs were lost to the Northern Ireland economy and to prevent it from happening again. One other point, the one thing throughout this process that I was extremely concerned about was the way in which department officials treated the scrutiny committee. And I mentioned that before, whether it was selectively leaking the meeting note of the 11th March to the BBC before this committee, despite this committee asking for it beforehand. In one of the FOIs that I have received, it shows a WhatsApp interaction. Now, it does not tell us who that is from, it's redacted, but it is a request by an individual who is seeking the minutes of the 11th of March meeting. They're asking whether or not that should be communicated via email, in which it appears that that is suggested that would happen. But it then says, don't say much. Now, is that an attempt to conceal information from this committee, who are rightfully asking questions about investment? All of this has to come out. We need to get to the honest position of why these jobs were lost. And I think at this stage, I'm content to go away and have further study of the documents that have released. That may raise further questions about, is there additional information we can get? Is there an ability for us to see unredacted versions? All of that, I think, is a more mature position to come when I've had, and members have had further chance to discuss this. I think it's 150 pages here, but there's other FOIs that are now in the system.
Okay, and again, and Declan and Padraig as well, and again, just to try to keep it in terms of what this committee's role is, the information of the committee. I think Jonathan makes a fair point that if the committee's asked for information and hasn't got it, if things are coming out in FOIs, I think that's a fair thing to bring back if people have time to go through it. But I'm just trying to keep the role of this committee clear in terms of this. So Declan?
Yeah, and I completely agree. The committee, as a scrutiny committee, it's entitled to maximum transparency. You've heard me say this on other committees before. So, on that particular point, Tamajuri and Inchin, we're of one mind on that particular point. On Diana's suggestion that I'm making an assumption about Howard Lutnick, I'm not. I'm saying that it is a relevant consideration because it is referenced in the documentation that we have. So let's not discount that this can be a consideration, which may very well play directly into the commercial sensitivities, considerations and changing priorities of Cantor, and may or may not be tied up with wider US administration policy. So to clarify that particular point, there's no assumption being made, but I do think it's a relevant point to consider. It will take as long as it takes, but to be helpful to yourself in relation to trying to expedite on the matter so that this does not become by osmosis a journey down a rabbit hole for however long that continues. My contention is that the relevant reference is by mutual agreement, which is reflected in the Cantor correspondence. Mutual agreement with who? I infer from that mutual agreement between Cantor and the lead officials negotiating.
Do we want to ask that for
so
clarity?
Can I come to my concluding point? That it's with the relevant officials negotiating on behalf of Invest NI. Therefore, it may well be helpful to expedite this, to actually bring this matter to a conclusion, to ask Invest NI to present or to clarify or provide additional information in relation to these issues. And I do think we need to be careful with our characterisation of this. This is not the loss of 300 jobs. What we're dealing with on the basis of what we know at this point in time is a decision by an investor to discontinue with a prospective investment. And we are unclear as to why the investor has made that decision. But I assume that the answer lies somewhere between interactions between the investor and Invest NI, between that interval of 11th of March and the drafting and the issuing of the correspondence on the 7th of May.
Are we proposing inviting Invest NI to committee to talk about this? Would that be... Is that what the proposal?
Well, I'm suggesting that is a logical step to take. I'm relaxed about timing, whether it's next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks' time, but I do think that that's the obvious way to avoid this becoming simply an endless interminable discussion.
I agree, Declan, and that's why I'm just trying to, trying to draw to what the action points are, and Padraig just, and then we're going to the clerk will maybe take a view.
No, and Chair, look, I agree that I think what we need to establish is what are the parameters of this committee and what's the scope of this for us as a committee. And I think within that, there's been some conflation of the departmental role and the role of Invest NI. Perhaps a misunderstanding of that, deliberate or not. So I think that within that context, we have to look at the role of Invest in this. And that's where, if there are outstanding points, I think that's where those questions need to be asked. I just don't want us as a committee to mix up those roles. If we're looking for more information, that's fine. but let's look for it in the right place, is what I'm saying. So my suggestion would be, and I think it just mirrors David's point earlier, that to ensure that we're actually looking in a strategic way, in a proper way, for information that is actually to, I suppose, seek clarity on this. That's fine, but we need to do that firstly with the right agency, which is InvestNI. But secondly, if we're going to do this in the proper way, and we're going to ensure that this isn't, a political rabbit hole that we go down, then the questions need to be asked of Invest as the lead agency on this. So I think that would be a pragmatic way to deal with this.
Sure.
Firstly, I don't completely agree with that, because ultimately it was a meeting with departmental officials and it was the minister, and there is a note of that. So I don't think it lies solely with InvestNI here. I think that there's the two parameters of it, and this committee does have a role. But sorry,
yeah, just to bring this point across, I'm not conflating the two at all. I know the roles of InvestNI, I know the roles of the minister and her department. They're both referenced clearly in the document, so there is points of clarity from both. But Declan has raised an interesting point, and he says it's irrelevant whether it's this week or next week that the committee take that decision. I'm saying, for the help of other members, there's a considerable body of evidence here. I'm content to hold this until next week, until we can take decisions about what members feel comfortable with and further information.
Yeah. Okay. So okay. So we're obviously will be recess. So we'll be back on is it the 15th of April. Would everyone be content to consider this again at that point? Will we just hold it under even chair's business or something?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Is everyone in agreement on that? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so so moving to the next item, just in case I'm missing it. Item 10. Page 729, members, we have a response from Falsha Ireland in respect of the extension of its branding. No, Sinead's not here, but everyone had an interest in this. There are no plans to licence Ireland's Ancient East or Wild Atlantic Way brands for use in Northern Ireland. The Hidden Heartlands extension followed a suggestion by the All Ireland Strategic Tourism Group. Falsha Ireland declines to provide oral evidence to the committee. David?
Can we have the All Ireland Strategic Tourism Group in with us then? Because this is going round and round and round.
Members be in agreement with that.
Yes.
And again, just Sinead's obviously not here, and she felt quite strongly around this and why we didn't have access to the licensing, and how Falsha Ireland were supposed to be here and had pulled out off the meeting at the time. So yes, if we could, I think that would be a good suggestion to hear from the All Ireland Strategic Tourism Group as to why the Hidden Heartlands, the Fermanagh aspect of it, was able to be shared, but the others haven't. It would be good. Everyone in agreement with that action? Thank you. Okay, so item 11, page 733, members asked to note a response from Tourism Ireland, including information on its budget for the last 5 years, information on social media marketing costs and campaigns, and just linked to item 12, page 739. Members asked to note a response from Tourism Northern Ireland providing budget information on the same. This came on the back of a query previously. And just on it, I just wanted to highlight through it in terms of the social media influencers was where the query had came from when they were in. Just looking like Tourism Ireland have about £2.5 million over the past 5 years, and Tourism Northern Ireland on content creators is £224,000. Now, my question specific to it is around how this satisfies procurement rules, because the data's there. We understand that it drives traffic and the commentary around it, but nobody has set out any detail as to how and who has decided which content creators they have linked with, what ethical considerations, what connected brands any of these content creators have, and just for me in particular, just how it's satisfying the procurement rules when you're going to individuals with different amounts of money, because whenever you do start to add it up, it's a lot of money. And we can see the traffic being driven, but as this becomes a more common, you can see it over the years going from 5,000 right up to £74,000 in 2025 for Tourism Northern Ireland. It is a increasing amount of money, and if that is the way that the market's going and that's the amount you're going to be spending every year, I personally would ask the committee that we write to Tourism and departmental representatives as to how this satisfies the requirements of procurement as this spend grows.
Yes, I would support that, Chair, and also, you know, quite often is the case with influencers, you know, they may also be supportive of other projects that perhaps is not aligned with the views of Tourism NI or others, and then it comes into a conflict of, well, in giving paid service, are you supporting other things in which they've been influencing on? So I think there is an ethical question there to ask in that as well.
Okay, Patrick?
Look, I have no difficulty with that. I think what's important is the terms of reference within that as well, in terms of what is their role, what is the specific aspect that they're doing for, because I get what's being said. I think from my understanding of the previous presentation we had, the purpose of working with investors is actually to maximise reach and is actually to maximise the number of people who see it. So those are quite often done at a point in time, so it might be a specific video. It's very rarely, I suppose, an ongoing and a lasting contract as such, so no difficulty in doing that. I think that would be really useful to understand the procurement, but I think it would also be really useful with, I think, to kind of round off that conversation, we need to look at whether contracts are involved, terms of reference, because I think we need to understand the whole picture there. And I suppose I said it at the last meeting when we did this as well. For people my age, this is a hugely important way of seeing places locally. So I think that we need to be cognizant of that and make sure that we don't undermine the strategic work. At the end of the day, you know, Tourism NI and these other bodies are the experts in this, so we don't want to risk actually undoing or curtailing some of the work they do. So getting clarity on that, absolutely, but I think we need to recognise the huge potential and the growth. I was looking at some of those figures prior to the committee, and I note that there's actually been a small decline since 2024 compared to 2025 in the budget. So it would be interesting to get, I suppose, an understanding of that, and whether that means that there's now a bit of a tail in the spend as well. So I'd be keen to understand all of that. The procurement, absolutely, but getting the whole picture.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. It's actually increased for content creators, but it's gone down in the YouTube within the Tourism NI on it. But I just think that it's important because you can see how it's reaching, but I know with a whole lot of other collaborations, you know, to make sure that in order to safeguard the public money, that there is, as you say, a terms of reference that's going out saying if you're representing Tourism Northern Ireland for this, you know, we expect you to, you know, operate to this standard and stuff. But just as it is growing, nobody's saying it's not successful, but it's just one of those things where as things start to grow, you're hitting into higher bands of procurement. So if everyone's happy, we'll to get a wee bit more detail around that from Tourism NI. Thank you.
Chair, could I ask if Tourism NI, or if we could look at how Tourism Ireland or Fáilte Ireland, what their terms of reference would be, you know, in comparison, if there's anything that can be compared between the two, the three different tourism operators.
Yeah, because we've got the sort of the correspondence through both Tourism Ireland and Tourism Northern Ireland, so I think we would certainly be placed to write to both of them on the same issue if everyone's in agreement. Yeah,
you would imagine that there would be like a code of best practice or so, you know, something like that. So
and that could be the simple answer that satisfies us, but I think we need to ask the question.
Definitely agree with that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, so item 13 for page 749, members are asked to note a response from Tourism NI in response to our previous session. Now they're advising in it that budget confirmation remains required for destination stewardship plans. They also, in respect of the Moore Gateway project, discussed how an alternative is proposed for District Council. In respect of promotional activity for Carlingford Ferry, they referenced the Discover NI website, and on the Visit Derry review that the City Deal has agreed to increase funding. Personally, I find some of the responses a bit vague on this, but I'm happy to pick those that I am specifically interested up as an individual MLA with no action for the committee. Is committee content? Yeah, thank you. Thanks, John. Yeah, absolutely. Moving to item 14, page 755, members are asked to note a response from Tourism NI in respect of the International Tourism Events Fund. Our committee content to note?
Can't, yeah.
Thank you. Item 15, page 7 6.3, members are asked to note a response from Tourism NI referring to Skills Action Plan for the tourism sector and Tourism and Hospitality Skills Group, which has been established to coordinate this work and support sustainable growth across Northern Ireland. The Skills Plan is scheduled for publication spring 2026. Do we have a specific date or any details around that?
That's all it says.
Yeah, it is spring 2026. No, it was just wondering if we get any more.
That could be like June.
Yeah, okay, so we'll keep an eye on that. Committee, are you content to note? Yeah, thank you. Item 16, page 770, members are asked you to note a copy of correspondence from the House of Lords, Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland in respect of Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. This refers to a significant December 2025 agreement by the EU Commission of an exemption from the EU's CBAM for UK electricity crossing from GB into the Republic of Ireland via Northern Ireland. A permanent solution is to be sought through the wider reset of the UK-EU relationship. Is the committee content to note? Yeah, thank you. Item 17, page 774, members asked to note a copy of correspondence from the House of Lords, Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland in respect of car registration issues and seeking the relevant legislative timeline on this. Is the committee content to note? Okay, thank you. Item 18, page 778, members asked you to note a copy of correspondence from the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to the Department of Business and Trade in respect of safety of toys as regards to cobalts. Committee content to note. Thank you. Item 19, page 780, members are asked to note a copy of the Office of the UK Internal Market 25-26 report. Perhaps a quarter of businesses record a reduction in volume of sales to and from Northern Ireland, with the rest of the UK. Around 11,000 businesses made 1.5 million HMRC declarations for goods from GB to Northern Ireland at a value of £17.2 billion. The volume is steady, but the number of businesses has dropped from over 12,000 in 2022, with 60% of Northern Ireland intra-UK sales involving small or medium businesses. So a bit concerning to see the small and medium businesses drop off, but the volume is noted as steady. Our committee content to note. Thank you. Item 20 at page 832, members are asked to take note of a Competition and Markets Authority review into home heating oil supply. On this one, I just wondered, it came up a few times, do we have any information or update on this exercise in terms of getting a list of data of homes that are actually heated by oil?
That is the difficult bit. As you remember to be aware, there are such things as dual fuel, so that people can have both oil or can have coal and gas. I'm aware of. So,
is there anything that we can do or access from them in terms of this data? Or?
We can actually write to them. We could write to CMA and just ask them to just about that, about establishing the numbers of people that actually have.
It's just quite critical in the current time. It came up in the previous one. We would be happy to write to see if there's any move on gathering that data. Yeah, thank you. Item 21 at page 845, members are asked to consider correspondence from Drilling and Pumping Supplies Limited related to changing to product labelling from 1D to 2D barcodes from 2027. I don't know if anyone knows much about this, but it seems to be moving from barcodes to QR codes by next year. Does anybody know much about this? It was quite new information to me. I was wondering, can we get a bit more information about that? That'd be quite substantial if products and supplies right across the country are all moving from barcodes to QR codes within the next year. Can we
to the department for comment?
Yeah, we'll write to the department and see what. Yeah, Patrick?
Yeah, I wanted to write to the department and also maybe write back to the individual, just asking for a bit more detail from their experience in terms of whether or not there's been any consultation with themselves around that as well.
As I say, I'm new to this committee, so I didn't know, had I just not seen this coming through, but it would be good to get a bit of information on it. Okay, thanks, everyone's in agreement. Item 22, page 847, members ask you to note a copy of a complaint to the Information Commissioner. Is the committee content to note? Yeah, thank you. Item 23, page 875, members ask you to note an invitation from Transmission Investment Limited to an event on the 15th of April 2026. Is the committee content to note? Yeah, thank you. Members, have you any queries or points to make in respect of any of the correspondence? Thank you. Good to get through it all. It's quite a list this week. So moving to item 12, forward work plan. Members, I refer you to the draft forward work programme at page 877 and hand over to Peter.
So members, 15th of April, when we're back after Easter, we're going to get community energy, talking about community energy projects. Then the department and Great British Energy are going to come together to respond on that one. So it's shown as 3 briefings, it will be 2. Go Succeed, we hope, will come on the 22nd of April. The utility regulator bill, we've actually received that, and so we should get our pre-second stage brief around the 22nd of April. I'm not quite sure when second stages are going to happen, but the idea would be that once they've happened, we then get briefings from RAISE and the Bill Office on bills to kick off our committee stage. That might be 29th of April. On other things, 13th of May, members. The suggestion is that we go to the Balmoral show and maybe we do an informal evidence-taking event, maybe about the onshore petroleum licensing bill. So we wouldn't have a meeting that day, and I could move things to the other week. So we would just go there in the morning. I think it's like 10:30 to 12 would be our slots. I know that other committees are there in the afternoon.
It was obviously my idea.
But if a few members are content to do that, to not have a meeting that
it would be in our committee slot. I think that it would be a good engagement session.
It was great last year.
Yes.
We did the joint one last year.
Are we doing a joint one again this year?
We could probably crash. I'll ask the Agriculture Committee if we can crash their event again, and they didn't mind last time. So, but we would do something ourselves, maybe about the bill. That would just give members an opportunity to chat to passers-by, etc. If that's
everyone happy with that. There's a good number of representatives. To let them know that the economy committee's there. You have a load of sector representatives there. Padraig?
On another forward work programme.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'll
Yeah, you want to go ahead?
Sorry, just the other thing is that as the Permanent Secretary advised us previously, the Minister is about to make decisions on the budget for 26-27. There will be a budget bill. So the suggestion would be that we seek a briefing in April on the decisions that have been taken. So what's gone where, if the committee are content with that.
Yeah.
Chairperson. Mr. Delargy.
Yeah, Padraig, did you want?
Yeah, no, Kate and I attended the Skills All-Party Group yesterday, and a really, really good session. We heard from the Skills Council representatives, and I suppose one of the asks from the PAC committee, which obviously 3 of us used to be on, was that
I'm still on.
You sound very happy about that, David. Was that there would be more joint working between education and economy. So that was one of the clear asks coming out of that all-party group yesterday. And on that basis, I know we had looked at scheduling a joint committee around CAO and UCAS, but I'm wondering, I suppose, firstly, where's that at? And then is there also any potential for us to look at either another scheduled event on skills and that collegiate working, or is that something that we do a longer session on that day? And I appreciate it's really hard to tie down the 2 committees because they have so much legislation too, but it was just a check-in from the all-party group.
So on the CAO and UCAS piece, what that was about was the Republic of Ireland recognising our qualifications, and the bit about exam day, because exam day in the Republic of Ireland is late, and that messes things up. So we're getting the NUS-USI on the 6th of May and the IUA, which is the Irish Universities Association, to come along to talk about their project on equivalencies. We've written to the Minister in the Republic of Ireland and to our own Minister in Northern Ireland about the State Examination Commission and the Joint Council for Qualifications to come along and talk about coordinating results day. Yeah, no answers so far. So I think I'm just going to write off to them and just say, please come on the 6th, and hope that they are suitably impressed and come along. But that's where we are. In terms of booking time, I'll speak again to the clerk of the Education Committee. Their bill situation is interesting, so I think they may struggle to find the time, but I'll ask them, because it is in our books to do things on careers, on childcare, a couple of other things, but I'll ask Aveen how they're fixed for doing that.
Yeah, even a short thing, or even were you talking about like a full meeting on it, or even an event or something? Did you mention that? Sorry, maybe I picked you up wrong.
No, it's I'm easy with whatever format, and I know that there's been a lot of work, Peter, by yourself to try and link that up. So it's I suppose it's just to try and work out, like, I'd be very content if we do a session outside of our normal committee session. If that didn't work, I just think that there's such a crossover between the 2 departments, and it's something that we've all been working on, that it might be useful. So perhaps if the barrier was that they couldn't give up any committee time, that we would suggest another, and very flexible with whatever format. I just think that it's the content that's the important.
I think that is good. I think you will get the feel that we've got the general consensus of this committee anyway to do something like, you know, you can pull these things before, you know, a morning meeting, a lunchtime meeting, or a wee event sort of thing. Slightly more.
Even early on a plenary day.
Yeah.
Radio. Will do. I'll take that.
Yeah,
away.
everyone.
Works actually very well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. So that's on forward work plan. Yeah. Members, are you content and agreed that this is published on the forward work plan is published on the website? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, that's normally my finance committee papers. I just said it. Any other business, members? No? Okay, thank you. Date, time and place of the next meeting. So the next Economy Committee meeting is scheduled to begin on Wednesday the 15th of April at 10 a.m, room 30 here in Parliament Buildings, Stormont. Hope everyone enjoys their recess. And I just want to put the question that the Economy Committee meeting does now adjourn. Agreed? Thank you.
5 minutes. Committee Room 30. Sound.